Welcome back to Dan's Gardening. Today I'm going to demonstrate a technique called winter sowing. This involves planting seeds in containers and placing them out in the snow and the cold. Yes, you heard me correctly, out in the cold. This technique actually works quite well, as I've been using it for the last several years. It works best for cold hardy vegetables such as greens, lettuces, kale, and even Brussels sprouts and cabbages. As the weather warms in the spring, these seeds will germinate on their own. So join me today as I demonstrate this technique. For my winter sowing project today, what I'm going to be planting is two types of lettuce. The one is called Four Seasons. That is from Burpee Seeds. It is an heirloom type of lettuce, like a butterhead type. It's supposed to be cold hardy, good for spring or fall. We'll try that. And I'm going to plant romaine lettuce, which is a good general purpose lettuce that I grow every year. I'm going to plant two types of kale. One is called a Tuscan kale. It's an heirloom. It has a little purplish green color to it. And also a red Russian kale. There are a lot of types of kale to plant, very many varieties, so sometimes it's hard to choose. And finally, I'm going to plant some Brussels sprouts. Stay tuned. For winter sowing, the materials you will need are a plastic water jug, or even a milk jug. Just make sure it's well washed out and rinsed. Of course, the seeds that you want to plant, potting soil, a drill with about a 1/4 inch bit, duct tape, and a knife. The first step is to drill about 4 holes into the bottom of the container. This will allow for drainage as the container sits outside, and as it rains and or snow melts into it, this will allow for proper drainage until germination of the seeds. The next step is to cut around the plastic jug about at the halfway point on the jug, leaving a 3 or 4 inch space by the handle, which will act as a hinge. The container is now cut open, which allows you to access it to now put in the potting soil and prepare to plant. Place a good amount of potting soil into the container and then wet the soil using your faucet water. And you have the drain holes in there so the excess water will drain. And then we will tamp down the soil to create a smooth planting surface. The container is now ready to plant. In this case, I'm going to plant some romaine lettuce seeds. So I'll just sprinkle those seeds in the soil. And I should have mentioned before, but the soil that I use is a potting soil mix, not a seed starting mix. A lot of the seed starting mixes are very light, consisting mostly of peat moss, and they don't hold moisture very well, so they will tend to dry out more. They're hard to keep watered. These potting soils have more body to them, more organic matter. They work better for this technique as they will hold the moisture in the soil until time that the seeds germinate. You can see the lettuce seeds there are sprinkled over the surface of the soil. I put them in fairly thick. They can always be thinned out once they start to germinate. Now I will place about a 1/4 inch of soil over the top to cover these seeds. I will now use a spray bottle to wet the seeds. This is more gentle and won't disturb the seeds as opposed to using a running water. This works very well. The final step is to tape around the container. Once the seeds have been watered and the soil tamped, tape around with a duct tape to seal up the container, and we leave the cap off the container. That will allow for water to enter during the process when it sits outside. You can see the container is now totally taped up and sealed, ready to place outside. Always make sure to label, of course, with what you've planted and the date. The important thing, obviously, is to leave the cap off because you want to allow moisture to get in there. There's actually no maintenance to these whatsoever until they germinate. At that time, you will have to handle them as you would any other seedlings, making sure they don't freeze at night and so forth, and getting proper water. But until then, absolutely no care for these containers. The final step is placing these containers outside. And as you can see, I have a little spot here in the side garden. As you can see, it's pretty cold. Not a lot of snow at this point, but even if these containers completely get covered in the snow, buried in the snow, it will not hurt them. As the weather warms in the spring, we will check for germination. Thank you for watching.